morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are. Thank you for joining. At CIQ, we're focused on powering the next generation of software infrastructure, leveraging the capabilities of cloud, hyperscale, and HPC. From research to the enterprise, our customers rely on us for the ultimate Rocky Linux, Werewolf, and Apptainer support escalation. We provide deep development capabilities and solutions, all delivered in the collaborative spirit of open source. Good morning.
Good afternoon.
How are you?
I am awesome. I'm really excited about today's topic.
Me too.
Probably because, as a company, we weren't, CIQ was not built for, specifically with this in mind, right? There was no Rocky when CIQ was first formed.
It's very true. It's very true. But it
There was like a-
became very necessary, though.
It became very necessary. There was like a whole different Linux landscape at that time a few years back. And so now that we are here, we have had just a tremendous amount of people come to us and really want migration help, right? They're like, okay, well, now that CentOS has been end of lifed, that's a whole nother story. I don't know if we want to get into that right now, but I don't think it's totally necessary. I think we know where we're at. And so, and Rocky came to be, people are like, okay, well, how do I move, right? Because the last version of CentOS is 7 something?
7, yes. So that's the interesting part is when 8 was out, 8 went away almost immediately, just gone. But they let 7 stick around for a little bit longer. But I think it's a little surprising. I have conversations more and more now of people who don't realize that 7 is going away in July of next year. It's gone. Which is why it's really important to have this conversation now, because it's going away and you have to find where you're going next. And we prefer that you come to Rocky.
We do, but I mean, that's not an easy transition, even if you wanted to, even if it was your choice and you didn't kind of have to, right? Like going from 7's whatever to 8 whatever, or 8 whatever to 9 whatever, like it's a big move. There's a lot to consider. And especially if you've been kind of fancy with your environment, it is a little bit more time consuming, and there's a lot of little like a web, right? Little pieces.
Absolutely. And one of the things that we harp on specifically when we talk about Ascender is if you automate this stuff, it makes that transition easier later. So a lot of people have done a lot of configuration management and they've done a lot of automation, but it's still surprising how many people weren't or are not prepared for something like this. So I think this is a fantastic topic.
This is a really good topic. I just had a crazy question come into my mind, but maybe I'll write it down and ask later so we can kind of jump into it.
Do it.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm writing it down. But I think that we have, okay. So what exactly are we talking about? I think you guys have got it, right? So it's like migration.
Yeah.
Migration specifically from CentOS 7 to Rocky 8. And I actually had a question come in today of like, hey, can we don't want to move from 7. Like, what then? I'm like, okay, well, I can't really answer that question for you. So we are Rocky 8 and beyond.
It's a much more complicated question to answer.
Yes.
You could continue to run it if you so chose. Just know that there's no errata, there's no security fixing there. It will be stuck in time.
Stuck in time.
And I unfortunately see far too many people that have just done that. They've stuck themselves in time on some very old enterprise version 4s, version 5s. We're talking 16, 17-year-old versions. It's not uncommon. It's not a great place to be, but not uncommon. Oh yeah, I saw 4 recently. Yes. Mission critical, 6,000 machines, 4.
Oh man, you're making it tough for your own self.
It's terrifying. Terrifying.
Job security. Yes. Okay, so let's bring Greg on. I know that we have there he is.
There he is.
Hey everybody. Ooh,
yes. Welcome, Greg.
Sound a little rough today. Oh my goodness.
A little hoarse. Did you wake up with the allergies that are going on around?
No, this is day 3
of my
fever. So I'm not really sure if you guys are actually here or is this still just a fever dream. So
it's a dream. It's just a fever dream. Just do a really good job either way. Doesn't matter.
Well, this is actually really powerful because if you can use Ascender to help you automate even when you're sick, this is powerful stuff. right? So this is testimony to the
For
power.
sure. Yeah, I'm
Should we actually
amazingly
say that
good at
though?
clicking buttons. You'd be
Should we
surprised.
say that? Because somebody, like, are we? If you're sick and you can still do your job, you don't get to take sick days. So that might not make everybody happy, but the admin would be happy. Automate my job away.
That's kind of
I
what
can
we
be
want.
sick and not tell anybody. They'll never know. It's
Yeah.
fantastic. I love it.
Well, I mean, really, to me, it's is there a difference? Can you tell if I'm sick or not? Because I think I do this amount of work either way. So, like, really,
All right. Well, tell us all about it. Show that this tiny bit amount of work that is going to save a lot of people, a lot of headache, a lot of time, and a lot of money.
yeah. Let me do the screen shared thing. I think it
And throw the
is
appropriate caveats in here too.
absolutely. It is pretty interesting. After Effect. Is everything sharing? We looking good?
No, I can't see
No,
anything.
we're not. Not yet.
All right.
Mm-mm.
This one,
We're waiting.
fellas and fellettes. Let me try one more time. It says there
It
goes.
is. There we
goes.
go.
It was just thinking on it. It was sharing. It
Somebody
just
was thinking in the background.
wasn't going. Excellent. We're going. We're good.
Remain nameless.
Yeah. You kind of hit the nail on the head there, Zane. Some caveats. We definitely need some asterisks around this stuff. I'm not saying you're going to be able to transition every one of your machines. So I have been doing some testing using the Elevate tool made by our friends over at Alma Linux. They created this awesome tool called Elevate that kind of tags on top of the Leap tool. So it's like a little bit meta, right? We're using several tools that call a tool. But the Elevate tool will take, say, a CentOS 7 box. In this example is what I'm going to be working with here. And it will migrate it over to a lot of different things. And one of those things is Rocky Linux 8. So I'm doing a Linux 8. Now, I am doing a fairly simple build. It is just a simple little web server. You can see this amazing web page that I made. Yes, it is the testing web page. So I didn't even bother to put an actual HTML page in there. I just used the testing page. But if you are doing a simple machine, right, it using kind of standard packages, there's nothing too chocolate in there, right? Vanilla is going to be kind of plain, normal. Chocolate's going to be customized. So if you're pretty much a vanilla install, so far I've had pretty decent success using the tool. And it is about a 20-minute process with about 10, 15 individual steps. So it's pretty nice to automate it. Let me show you how simple it can be. So
I
this
don't think,
is, go
Greg, we're
ahead.
not going to go too much into. Sorry, I forgot to turn my dinger off on my watch. Not going to go into the tool as much in this one as how to automate the tool. So not as much
Yeah.
showing how the actual tool works. Just want to.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. And in fact, we have a blog post, I think, this right here, a blog post that goes into nice full detail on all the steps we took, right? Breaking everything down. So if you really are curious how look at this, look at these beautiful screenshots I made. So if you're curious, like how to reproduce all of this, there is a step-by-step in addition to a video, because different people learn in different ways. So yeah, if you do want to go further down the rabbit hole, we talk more about kind of the tool itself in there. But we're here to see some cool stuff happen, right? So
Absolutely.
in my Ascender, my automation platform here, right? This is my Grand Central Station where I run all of my automation. I'll type CentOS and find all of my job templates associated with it. So I could have just one playbook, right? If you're familiar with Ansible, we create these things called playbooks, which are just our automation scripts that Ansible consumes and performs interesting actions. Each one of these listed as a job template really is referring to a playbook, right? So these are all just little playbooks. Now you can see I have a whole bunch of them, and that's because I have them do very discrete operations. Instead of one big thing to rule them all, I break them into little bite-sized chunks. And as I think the famous Justin Burdine once told me, he likes to do that because it makes him Lego bricks, and so I've stole that line for myself as well. So they become these little things you can snap and use in different workflows. And so I'll hit the CentOS 7 migration workflow visualizer right here. And as any good network engineer likes, I've got these little pictures that I can follow and diagrams, right? It soothes my brain. I love seeing it in this fashion. But each one of these squares is a different little playbook that it's going to run. So I'm doing a migration on a CentOS 7 box. It's actually one that's important. I mean, theoretically, not really. I don't care about my test page, but theoretically, I care about this box. It's probably something in production, or maybe it's in some dev environment where it's actually important. So I can't just try and migrate it and hope everything works, right? I need actually some assurances here. So what I do in my environment is I'm running VMware, and the first thing I do is I create a snapshot of the VM, right? That's nothing very complicated. I can go in there and I can right click and say create snapshot, but I can also do it in an automated fashion. So the very first thing that happens is creates a snapshot. Once that's done, it connects into my playbook, right? The CentOS 7 migration playbook, and it actually uses the Elevate tool to perform. The Elevate tool, first it has to do a pre-upgrade sequence where it's going to look for everything it might need to make an adjustment to, spits out this file. Well, the automation then goes through that file and looks for any recommendations it has, and it fires those against the machine. Then it completes the upgrade cycle. After it's done, I have a playbook in here that will test the web server, right? This could be test your web server. This could be test your database server. This could be test your DNS server, whatever it is. You can have any kind of test controls baked into here. So trust but verify, right? It looks like it upgraded. Let's go ahead and verify that it upgraded. Well, if this migration process fails, follows this red line right here that restores the snapshot. Remember, I told you this was like an important machine, maybe in production, maybe not, maybe in some special environment. Well, if it fails, I'm going to go ahead and roll that snapshot back, right? I'm going to revert back to a known good state, and we can try and recover from there later. But in this instance, it's going to work. Of course, it's going to work, right? I wouldn't do this live if it wasn't going to work. And it's going to hit the web server testing. Again, if that fails, restore the snapshot. And in my demo environment, if everything succeeds, I'm going to go ahead and remove this snapshot. Now, I'm going to tell you from doing stuff like this in actual life, I would not have this remove snapshot step there. I would have a reminder somewhere in a system that says 2 weeks later, if everything is still working right, go ahead and delete that snapshot, because oftentimes there's gremlins, somewhere in the system that you don't realize are there for a few days even. So it's nice to always have kind of that backup there.
I think it's important to point out this is much, much easier on a VM, and that's probably going to be 90+% of the use cases. But if you're doing this on bare metal, make sure you test your backup solution before you start. I've actually run into that more than once where backups weren't necessarily backing up, or we thought we could recover from a backup that we couldn't get back. So test it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Nothing is 100% foolproof. Well, this migration, I told you, even though I'm 3 days into my fever dream here, I can still click a launch button and it's going to work. Now, this is a 20-minute process. So we're not going to stand here and stare at this. I'm going to jump into the job section, and I'm going to look at the one that I ran yesterday so we can talk through that. And I'm going to click on the workflow right here, and you can see all the steps that happen inside that workflow visualizer, right? So even the output looks just like it did when we were actually building the workflow. And I can click on any individual step and it'll take me into that individual job, and I can see all the details, right? I can see the output. Oh, I did the snapshot, right? There's nothing really too interesting there. Let's see here. I'll jump into the workflow. Really, let's go into the migration. That's the interesting one. That's what anybody cares about in here. Now, remember, any time I have a job run, it produces all this awesome information. And it is a bit overwhelming to look at all this stuff. But really, if you break it down, it's showing who did what, when, and where, and what was the outcome. All of this information that we're producing here can actually get shoved off to a logging server as well. So I like to give a plug for Ledger. It's custom designed just for pulling in logging messages from Ascender, kind of any system that's derived from upstream AWX. It's really made to take and parse all that stuff. Great for compliance, great for reporting. I can even run a report on anything that changed, right? So I'm changing a bunch of stuff here. So it would be a good tool for using that as well. But I can come to my output and I can see all of my beautiful output here. I start by doing a quick CentOS 7 version check, right? I'm just building it so that at the very end, I can show a little message that says this was the version before, this was the version after. So I'm grabbing the OS version. I'm installing the Elevate tool. I grab all of the packages for said tool. Now, there's not a whole lot of detail that we see right here. But say, for example, I want to understand what happened here. I can click the changed part. I can click the JSON output, and I can see the detailed output of everything that was installed, right? So I can see the exact package that we pushed to that machine. So all of it's here and available for me to take a look at. Well, it's going to do the pre-upgrade. It's going to generate a report. It's going to have me go through. I do some standard pre-upgrade fixes, but then also anything that was in that pre-upgrade file, I run all of those. You can see I'm doing that right here. Next, I do the upgrade, and that joker takes a while. After it does that, it goes into the reboot sequence is what I call it, because it has to reboot. It'll do some configurations. It'll reboot again, do some configurations, reboot again. Then it's up and available. After it comes up, I pop back into it. I check the OS version, and I spit out this glorious message. The version before when we started was CentOS 7 core. Version after, running Rocky Linux 8.8. So I don't know. It's probably not the coolest thing you've ever seen. But the fact that it went through this 20-minute process and then did all the verification to upgrade me from CentOS 7. Now I'm Rocky 8 and I'm rocking and rolling. To me, that's actually pretty dope.
It's fantastic. So one of the things you talk about in the blog, Greg, is making sure you don't do it against every server and an inventory at the same time.
Correct. I'm an extremely paranoid person. I came from environments where we had 100% SLAs on literally everything. So we came from a data center environment where and I was in charge of the internet, and I had to guarantee 100% internet wasn't going to go down, right? So being in those kind of environments really it breaks a person. Let me just say that, right? No, it really changes the way you look at the world, honestly. And
Hence
so
the fever dream.
It's fever dream.
Residual.
No, I'm a belt and suspenders kind of person, right? So I check and I make sure that everything's going to be okay. So one of the things you can do in your playbook and in my playbook is you specify the host you want to operate against inside your playbook. And if I pop into mine right here, you can see I'm saying operate against all hosts. And that's cool unless I accidentally run this against a really important inventory and then it converts all of my stuff. Maybe I don't want it to convert everything. It could be dangerous. This could be delete a drive off a server and then I run it against everything. That could be really scary, right? So what I do is I bake into my playbooks. While I do have hosts all right here, I also have the very first task check to make sure that I'm not running against host all without adding the limit option. So in a job template that I'm going to run in Ascender, I can actually, there's a little field down there called limit, and I can fill that in to further narrow down who I'm going to actually operate against inside that inventory. And so it's just kind of, again, a belt and suspenders way that I'm making sure I'm not running against everything, but I can also limit things down. So that is definitely kind of my safety valve I bake into these playbooks. Isn't it glorious? All of this stuff. And this is also open source in a public repository. You can grab it and you can use it. I am always open to feedback. If anybody has any questions or comments, or they would adjust it, they would add this cool thing in here. Do a push request. Rose, you said you had a crazy question, which if it's crazy to you, I mean, I don't even know if it's gonna. Am I gonna be able to handle this?
I don't know. So I have 3 questions actually that have come up as you were talking.
Oh, we're adding to the list. It was 1. Now we're 3.
There was 1. I mean, but I think that probably this happens to you as well, right? It probably happens to everyone. It's like when someone says, "Oh, hey, you can do this," and it's like, "Oh, but can you do this? Can you do this? Can you do this?" Right? It's like, where does this ever end? So this is my question. So we'll go back to the very first one just to kind of wrap up here. Okay, so we were talking about like those old CentOS boxes, right? Like the 4, 5, 6, 7. Can you and I say this, I know that we're talking about Ascender, and so this is a little bit of a different tangent, but we also, as CIQ, we also support Apptainer. Like, can you containerize those old systems and just let them hang out there? Like, is that what people do? Like, how do you make sure that it is here?
Gotcha. Well, I think, Zane touched on something really important, is that if you have an old system and it's been deprecated, it's not getting updates anymore, right? So any security related stuff, I mean, while there is a way you could segregate it off and keep it alive over here, and I've never met anybody that doesn't have this special little area in their infrastructure where it's like, we can't touch this thing, but we absolutely have to have it running. You know, those things live over there and you try and protect them as much as possible. So really, if it's something you want in your production environment, especially if you have any compliance requirements or security audits, you really don't want it hanging out on something that's end of life.
You don't. And I agree. But we do have customers who have taken old machines like that, old apps that are running on, I know we've done it with Enterprise Linux 5, and actually put that into an Apptainer container. And then you can execute it on newer machines. So we are in some ways enabling tech rot. It does happen, and it does work in a lot of cases. It's perfectly acceptable to go do that. If you want to have that conversation of how we can help you enable more tech prop, we would love to, but we would prefer if you would just upgrade.
Yes.
Keep up with what's going on. But there are ways to do that. It is, in a lot of ways, it is elegant because it makes it simple and it makes it portable, but it also is not a great idea.
So if this kind of goes into my next question. I mean, if you're taking this, and I know that this is not the only way to do it, right? Using Leap isn't the only way, although this is kind of what we're talking about right now. So if you can use Ascender and Leap to help you upgrade from major version to major version of an OS, can you also automate and do one at a time for like regular DNF updates, like on current versions?
Oh, so like package management, is that what you're referring to? Like,
I don't know what you call it.
absolutely.
That sounds right.
Yeah. Ascender, that's one of the I would say one of the first use cases folks think of is like, how do I make sure my infrastructure out here is up to date on various packages? And so it's a very extremely common use case for it. So you can do rolling updates is a fun one, right? So you don't update all of your infrastructure at once. You do
Right.
a little chunk here, a little chunk there, a little chunk there. And when I'm saying updates, I'm not just talking about your Linux servers. I know most of the people we talk to are Linux admins, but for you Windows folks that are out there, you can stage your Windows updates. For those of you that are network engineers, you can do your firmware updates. That's a lot of really good, I would say almost low-hanging fruit as far as that stuff, especially when you're talking about like network updates. Usually any device you're going to perform an update on is 15 to 20 minutes of human time per device. And then on top of that, that's going to be, you need to do some testing, some checking on top of that. And so people going across their entire fleets can save so much time and have so much a more reliable experience using automation.
It's very exciting. I have one more question, but if you guys have questions, put them into the chat right there. We've got people all over the place looking and hanging out. And so we'll throw your question up here and we'll make sure that you get it answered. But this does kind of go into my last question here. Okay, so can you update only specific parts or packages within the operating system and not the whole thing?
You can. Yeah. So in Linux, say for example, we'll probably be using the DNF module, and a module in Ansible is just like a pre-written chunk of code that I don't have to read and I don't have to understand. All I have to do is look up the documentation and say, DNF module, let me fill in the blanks on the things I need. And so say for example, I was doing a web server. If I just want to update Apache, I would say call the DNF module, name. So what's the object I want to update? And I would put HTTPD, because that's what they call Apache instead of calling it Apache. And then I would say state latest, and I would run it, and it will go and it'll connect to that machine. It'll make sure Apache is at the latest state, or I can even specify a specific version number I want it to upgrade to. So you can be very granular in your updates.
And all of this can actually go back and to plug what Greg was talking about earlier, Ledger. So from a audit and compliance standpoint, you could push all of what you did to Ledger and have the audit and compliance people go look at it themselves without ever having to come ask you for the data. So it's a nice getting people off of your back.
Ledger,
an audit and know how fun that can be.
Yeah. Oh goodness. Ledger can even schedule reports to send. So it can just automatically show up to them if you wanted to do that.
For all of your infrastructure, not just Linux. to Greg's other earlier point.
That was awesome. Thank you.
Well, I'm sorry it went so fast. I know this thing, we're supposed to drag this thing out.
No, we don't need
No,
to drag
no.
anything out.
We
If
do
we're
some show
complete.
tunes. My voice is like 3 octaves lower right now, so I could do some Barry White maybe, or
Maybe. Is your voice going to crack? Because that's what's going to make it fun.
100% it will. I guarantee it.
It's
All
awesome.
right, so I'm going to go ahead and do we have questions, guys? Questions from the folks, questions from internal, external.
We have Jonathan making comments. That's it.
Jonathan making comments. What of just like admiration and
All
awesomeness?
problems in computer science can be solved by another level of indirection.
That reminds me of today's bug is a direct, was it a direct correlation from last year's bug fix or something like that? Sounds, yeah.
It's so unfortunately true, though. You're going through and writing software, that happens a lot.
That's like another
else to cover from your blog. No, I was trying to think. I think the one that I was really key on was the being able to do multiple machines, but make sure you're not doing them all at the same time. So rolling through.
Yeah, for sure. Well, there are some like serialized features inside of Ascender we can do. So the idea being I could do batches. So I can say I have 30 hosts I want to upgrade. Well, say they're all performing similar functions. I can tell it, all right, run against a single host first, and it will operate. It'll make its way all the way through. If that completes successfully, I can have it right just in one run. I could say, do this. And then it'll come back and it'll say, all right, run against 5 hosts. And if that completes successfully, all 5 of those, I can say, then run against 50% of what's left and then 100%. So I can actually kind of slowly batch it through. That is especially important for, say, networking elements. I've pushed configs that break things. And so it's good to make sure that, if I'm doing like some new firmware upgrade and it breaks stuff in the field, it will stop before it breaks anything else. So I can just kind of have my canary first in the list, make sure everything goes through clean, and then, go ahead and start batching through the rest of my infrastructure.
It's fantastic. And I just thought of another question. Now I lost it.
Where did it go?
I don't know. I must have Greg's fever dream brain.
So I think probably a really good point to make right now is that anyone who is familiar with automation probably either knows something about the capabilities of what it is that we were talking about, but maybe are a little bit overwhelmed with when they go to support, because most of the stuff is open source, right? They can go and play around with it and figure it out in command line and do all that jazz and figure out automation, make a playbook and all of that. But if they want support, right? If like this isn't like their jam, like they want to automate stuff so that they can go and do other stuff, or if they're kind of unfamiliar with it, getting support around that can be super crazy expensive, correct?
Excuse me. I'm hanging in there.
Okay.
We're alive.
You are.
We're close, man. We're close.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah. I mean, you hit the nail on the head there, Rose. And support for me has always almost been a 4-letter word. Like you have ultimately failed if you have to contact support. If your home internet goes out, you're probably going to have a bad time calling support, right? And I've had the opportunity to work with multiple vendors that made me feel that way, which is unfortunate. And definitely the word Justin likes to use is reimagine. But for me, it's simpler than that. It's like, what kind of experience would I want to have when I contact support? I want to not feel hinky about it. I want to not feel bad, like I'm about to lose a chunk of my life. And that's kind of how our support operates, right? You get in there, you get with a tier 3 tech, like right off the bat, and you get your problem solved. And you can actually get a human on the phone, which is, for me, sometimes I don't want to talk to a human. I totally get that when other people are in that mode. But sometimes when the world's on fire, you just want somebody on the phone to help you get through it as quick as possible. As well as, maybe you want somebody to look over your shoulder and, literally like in a Zoom call, look over your shoulder and help you work through it. So to me, it's been kind of a night and day different experience here at CIQ versus a lot of the other places I've worked with.
Yeah.
I remember my question, and Michael asked another question. I think you already touched on it, but you put all these playbooks out for consumption, right?
Yeah, they're in
Cool.
public Git repositories. All the links are in the blog post as well.
In the blog. That's what I thought. Just making sure.
Yeah.
My
the blog
question,
post is
you actually,
on the
sorry,
website.
Rose, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, then the blog post is on the website. I mean, that should be obvious, but
I feel like they linked it to this as well.
Oh yeah.
My question, whenever you said internet goes out, that was actually my question. Not if internet goes out, but can you run this, not just Ascender, but can you run the actual Elevate or Leap tool without an internet connection?
I'm willing to bet you can. Part of the migration is it wants to make sure that your CentOS 7 server is updated. It needs like the newest packages on it first. So that could be a project for you to take care of ahead of time. You don't, trust me, you probably don't want to do updates and then do this migration, because if the updates broke your system before you did the migration, you're going to be chasing your tail for a while. So I would say make sure everything's updated first, and then let's worry about migrating. But there is just a handful of packages that are required, and you could have those stored in kind of a local repository that you could pull from. So you could do it disconnected. I mean, it doesn't have to be online. I'm doing it that way because I'm lazy and it's easy, but you don't necessarily have to.
It's fantastic. And we do work with a lot of people who do not let their servers talk to the internet. That's why I ask. And I think it's also a good, interesting point that in the near future, you would be able to put these CentOS repos into Mountain. So you could do it in air-gapped environment. So have it pull from Mountain what you need and go apply what you need for Rocky.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's a good, a lot of our very security conscious people, that's kind of a best practice for them. Well, I hate saying best practice. It's a good practice, right?
Should be.
Yeah.
It's like we do have another question. Oh, from Jimmy.
Jimmy Kana, what's up, man? Thank you for watching. So upgrading between versions is a good stopgap, whereas the end goal should be to automate the building of the servers from scratch, as then you build your application out on any new version. That is true. That is definitely one of the things that we recommend as a best practice, but sometimes don't want to.
I would love to see more people go this route. I know we've been yelling this for years, but it's amazing how many people are still not proficient at it.
It's that like cattle versus pets kind of conversation, where if your machine is something that you have to lovingly tend to all the time, right, you can have problems with it. Whereas if it's something that you're not married to, you can just destroy it, build something up in its place, and you just pick up. And I mean, that's a lot of security people like that too. If a machine gets compromised, you just pull it offline and you put something else in its place. That way you can actually look at it, figure out what went wrong, do some after actions on those stuff. I think that was actually a direct attack from Jimmy to me, because like my personal blog, that thing, I've been limping that joker along for the last 12 years from one version to the next, just upgrading. And it's probably on such an old version that I can't even use this technique to upgrade it either. So I definitely need to get that taken care of. Point taken, Jimmy. I get it.
Point taken. Yeah. I mean, I understand that is definitely our recommendation. And so it is a little bit weird to kind of, being like, well, if you don't want to listen to us or get our help around that, then you can use this thing over here. So here's this cool thing. But we're also really highlighting Ascender and the power of Ascender and all the different things that you can do with Ascender, which is open source. And thank you, Jimmy and Greg and Michael and Justin and all the other amazing people who have contributed to that. But as a company, CIQ does offer the support, and we wanted to do it a little bit differently. And instead of having you count nodes and what are things connected to and how's this going and like charge you for all the different things, we're like, you know what, we just really want to support the admins. We kind of started our conversation today about that, where it's like, you get more free time, right? Automate things. We love you. Shh, the bosses aren't listening. Wait, they have to pay for it. Yes, okay. Everything's going to be wonderful. We're all going to save time and money, which is true. And so in supporting the admins, it makes the whole world open up, and all of my crazy questions and all the questions that you have, and like, can Ascender and automation help with this and help with this and help with that and automate all these different things? The answer is go try it. And yes, and we're happy to help. So if that is something that is inspiring to you, myself, Jimmy, Zane, all the rest of us at CIQ would love to chat with you more about what that admin model means. It's kind of new and different, and we kind of have to explain it a little bit in many different ways, to people to really kind of like comprehend and understand the value that we're giving there. So we're very excited about that, and we'd love to chat with you. So get a hold of us.
Absolutely. We do have one more question, Greg, from
Oh,
Wally. He actually asked, are libvirt snapshots as good as a VMware snapshot?
I'm the wrong person to ask that question to.
I'm trying to think. I don't remember ever taking a libvirt snapshot because I usually just blow them away and start over. I would assume the answer is yes, Wally. And I also know the second part of his question is, did your playbooks do the snapshotting? The answer is yes.
Mm-hmm.
You had a snapshot playbook
as
a part of the workflow.
Yeah, I have a playbook that does all the portions of the snapshot, and whether it's create it, restore it, delete it, and it just depends on what variable you pass in, what you want it to do. So make them as flexible as you possibly can. That's usually what I go for.
So you could technically decide which environment it's running in and decide if it's a VMware cluster. You could do a VM snapshot, or you could do a libvirt if it was running on a legitimate Linux machine.
Yeah, easy peasy.
KVM. I don't know why I can't ever get KVM out. Sorry.
Or if you're using a system like Proxmox, that's an open source one that a lot of folks use.
It's coming up a lot too. Yeah.
It'll work just as well. Yeah, I used to be a big user of Proxmox. Big fan.
Nice. Again, seeing a big uptick in that one. Also saved a lot of questions around over it again. Something must be going on.
I wonder what.
I don't know. And OpenStack's making a comeback, shockingly.
Speaking of all the amazing different companies out there, I just wanted to pop in too and say that we're going to be at SC23 this year. CIQ, we have a booth. It's 1855. We're going to be in Denver, Colorado. So come and see us. We're also happy if you're going to be there in person. We'd love to see you in person, meet you in person, and yeah, you can reach out to any of us just via our website or on the chat and get more information about that and how to schedule a meeting with us. Sorry, I had to pop that in there. I just remembered as you guys were like talking about all these different companies and services and things.
It's great.
It's like, heck yeah. Great. All right. So I think we're complete for the day. Do you have anything else that you want to add, Zane or Greg?
I don't. I appreciate it, Greg.
No, you guys are awesome. Appreciate it.
I know. Thanks for showing up, even though you're not feeling 100%. And so drink tea, drink plenty of water. Stay hydrated.
Don't plug mud water. Please don't go plug mud water. No, don't drink that.
I did fresh, clear, revitalizing,
clear
invigorating,
water. Okay,
plain
thank goodness.
lemon water.
I was worried.
All good in the hood. All right, you guys. Well, thanks for watching. Update your systems, and if you need to, migrate gently using our beautiful Ascender plus Leap services. We'd be happy to chat with you. Make sure that you like, that you subscribe, that you reach out to us, and we hope that you have a really wonderful day. We'll be back here next week, same time, same place. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks.